Hi, how you doing? The video I released a little while ago looking at the fight breakdown in the Sherlock Holmes film, despite my horrific editing, was surprisingly popular. So I thought it might be entertaining to do a few more videos along those lines. One of the films that was suggested to me by a couple of people was a film from the 70s by Stanley Kubrick, a multi-Oscar winning film called Barry Lyndon. It's not a film I'm familiar with at all, so I can't tell you much about the plot of it, but there is in it a fairly famous bare-knuckle fight scene between our hero and an antagonist. They're both in the army and it's set in a military camp. The two antagonise each other and they are taken away to fight as an official way of settling their differences. It's quite an entertaining fight. It's got a very different feel to the Sherlock Holmes fight that we talked about before. So what I thought we'd do is we'd look at the opening and we'd see the setting and get a little bit of a feel for it, and then we'll start talking through the different sections of the fight and whether they're authentic, where the techniques come from, and whether we would expect that to be representative of what people were doing during the period that this fight is set in, because again, this is a historical drama. So, I'll shush now and we'll get on with the first clip from the film.
Gentlemen, step this way, please. Both shake hands. Shake hands. Take your stance. No biting, kicking or scratching. The last man to remain standing is the winner. Gentlemen, commence fighting now.
Well, we've got a clear rule set. Obviously this isn't one of the historical rule sets that were used throughout the pugilistic era, but we've got some clearly defined rules. The two combatants are forced to shake hands. Yeah, okay. That fits with a lot of the introductory spiel that you get in some early boxing books about how the English have used boxing as a way of settling scores and getting even, and they do that to settle their differences, and it's kind of an accepted way of coming to a conclusion in a dispute, and that most times the combatants will be quite happy with the fact that whoever wins the fight is the person that wins the dispute. So that's quite nice. No biting, kicking or scratching. Okay, that seems fairly reasonable. But that does mean that quite a lot of things are acceptable. So knees, elbow strikes, grappling and throwing, those things would all be acceptable within that rule set. And last man standing is the winner. Now that's interesting because obviously we're not at this point looking at a round based system. Broughton's rules introduced rounds that ended when a combatant touched the ground, went down. So if they touched the knee or they fell to the ground or were thrown or were knocked down, that round would finish and people would then have 30 seconds to come back up and fight again. Clearly that's not going to happen in this fight, so it could make for an interesting one. If we're going to put this within any of the rule sets, then this would fit quite nicely in the early era, which is pre-Broughton's rules, the era that people like Fig were fighting in. Because at that point there was no accepted rule set, there were no rounds, fighters agreed the rules for the fight before they started, and that's what they fought to, and that seems to be what we've got here. So let's get back to the video, let's have a look at the beginning of the fight and see how it progresses.
Commence fighting now.
The first thing that we need to talk about here is that the guards are pretty good. The fighters both drop to a guard. Obviously the antagonist, the guy with the big scar on his shoulder, is considered to be the unskilled brute in this fight, because that's the story that seems to be being played here as much as it was in the Sherlock Holmes film. His guard's a little bit open, a little bit rough, whereas our hero's guard is a little bit closer and a little bit tighter. His hands are extended, and it's a much more typical pugilistic era guard. Then the fight starts. Effectively, the antagonist starts swinging some great big round blows, coming in. Our hero ducks underneath them, slips around, moves out of the way, weaves and bobs and dodges, and isn't caught by any of them. This goes on for a little while until our antagonist is thrown into the crowd. That's an interesting point. There was an incident in the famous fight between Tom Molyneux and Tom Cribb, where Tom Molyneux was caught by the crowd, and during that little rough and tumble he had, I think, one of his fingers broken. Tom Molyneux went on to lose that fight, and one of the reasons he did so was because of that. So that did happen. The crowd lined the area. Even if the ring had been constructed with posts and ropes, the crowd were literally right up against them, so that the boxers, the fighters, fell backwards into the arms of the people surrounding them. So that's quite a nice little touch that we've got there. And the fact that he's caught and kind of thrown back into the fight is a nice little touch. But I want to go back to those big sweeping round blows, and I thought what I'd do is I'd read you a few things from Alanson Wynn's wonderful little book on boxing. This is from 1890, I think, 1890, 1898 maybe. But yeah, so what we have here is on straight hitting. The natural tendency is to hit round. Put any two men together who have never heard of correct principles and tell them to double their fists and go for one another, the chances are very few of their blows will reach home, and they will damage their surroundings more than each other. Okay, that seems pretty accurate, really, doesn't it? But later on, when he's talking a little bit more about how you should learn to fight, what he actually does is he suggests that you go out into the countryside and find a farm labourer to try his hand with you, which seems a little bit dodgy, but I want to read you what he says about how this is likely to go on. He says, at first the bloodthirsty onslaughts may flurry you a bit, but never mind. If the rushes are terrific, retreat slowly at first, acting entirely on the defensive and weaving off the blows as they are showered down. Rustics invariably hit down and swing their arms round like the sails of a windmill, hoping after each miss to catch you on the next downward swoop. Having learned to guard well in the weaving style, the chances are you won't be much damaged and the blows will glance off your forearms without jarring. Then when your burly antagonist gets a bit puffed by his rushes and superfluous evolutions, you may make a bit of a stand and try your hand at timing. Now, to me, it almost sounds as if the choreographer of that scene had read that paragraph. That's pretty much exactly what we've just seen, which is quite nice. So, so far, I'm quite impressed with this fight. We've got an authentic setting, we've got an authentic area, we've got fighters in an authentic guard, and we've seen something that's described in one of the nicest little books on boxing from the era that we're looking at. So far, Barry Lyndon's doing well. Let's look at what happens next. Well, what happens next is clearly that our antagonist is either a little bit out of breath, or he's a little bit cautious in that none of his blows have managed to land. So he waits a little bit and tries to use his judgment a little bit, and then swings a big powerful blow. Let's go back and read one of the sentences that Alanson Wynn said. Then when your burly antagonist gets a bit puffed by his rushes and superfluous evolutions, you may make a bit of a stand and try your hand at timing. And that's exactly what's just happened here. What's happened is he's thrown a big sweeping blow, Our hero's evaded that, as he's done so far, and just put in a short round blow to the side of the jaw and floored our antagonist with one punch. Okay? I'm not particularly keen on the fact that this is a round blow. It would have been nicer to see it as a straight, probably a straight left to the jaw, but you know, you can't have it all. Let's see where we go next. Where do we go next? Well, more of the same. If I'm being honest, I'm beginning to be a little bit fed up with watching not a great deal happen at this moment. We've got the big guy's not very skilled and he's throwing some great big round blows, sweeping them down, trying to hit, and they miss. You know, we've got that, that's fine. This is probably quite an accurate representation of this kind of fight, but up to this point it's not particularly entertaining until the little combination at the end where we get a short contracted blow to the kind of the short ribs, the kidney area on his back, and then the same hand brings in a little contracted arm strike to the jaw, and then we bring a right round to the jaw again. Now again, I've got a little bit of an issue that all three of these are round blows, and what I'd like to see, if we're trying to portray a fighter who's got some skill in the ring, is to throw in the odd straight blow there. The little contracted arm hit to the back, that's great. And the round blow to the side of the jaw with the same hand, that's okay too. But at that point, there would be nothing to stop him throwing a straight with a right, as opposed to yet another round blow. I suspect that from the point of view of choreography, it looks a lot more impressive because you actually see, instead of just seeing the fist go out in a straight line, you see it travel round, and it makes for a much more entertaining picture. But it does mean sacrificing the authenticity. But anyway, let's look at that combination in a little bit of slow motion and see if we can see any more detail in there. Well, the slow motion doesn't give us any great detail on what's going on, but sadly what it does do is reveal some of the choreographical tricks that are taking place, which is a good reason to not look at this sort of thing in slow motion. We can see that the short blow to the ribs wasn't driven in into the body, it was driven in almost directly upwards. Wouldn't have done any damage at that sort of angle, and that the two round blows to the face were given in a way that they actually fell short, and it's the actor that's receiving the blows that's selling them. The third blow is the one that irritates me the most, because this is clearly a round blow coming round. It catches him on the jaw, supposedly, and as it does, instead of going with a round blow, seeing his head move around or any kind of rotational movement to it, he simply goes straight backwards. So that's a bit of a shame. Yet more reason that we should have put a straight blow into the choreography, because the person receiving it, selling that blow, would have made it look much more authentic. That being said, it's still pretty good. Let's move on, see what the next bit is. Okay, what we're getting here is clearly not going to be looking at the pugilistic canon, the techniques that are available in any great depth. It's simply telling a nice little story. What we see, yet again, he's brought to his feet, he's thrown back out into the ring by the crowd. He comes back in, he throws some round blows, we evade them, we catch him with yet again the same combination, low to the ribs, high to the face. This time he drops before the third one hits him. We can see exactly where this fight's going to go. You know, it's okay. It could have been better at this point, but it's not bad. take it all back, that was a lovely little technique. That's straight out of the pugilistic canon. That's exactly the technique that we've seen time and time again in manual after manual after manual, all the way back to the 1700s and through to the modern day. What we see is a large round blow coming in, we slip underneath it and drive a short right, that's the rear hand, into the mark, and then as that starts to fold them over, we drive over the top with a left to the face, and that floors them. That's brilliant. Love it. Take it all back. I love this film. Let's keep going. I'm not entirely convinced that that was gentlemanly behaviour. I can see his point, and I can understand why he's done that, but I think repeatedly punching somebody in the side of the head as they're trying to stand up and fight you again is probably not the most gentlemanly way to do this. However, in reality, good move. I can't say that this is something that we see in classical pugilism sources, and that's for the simple reason that when somebody hit the ground, they were stood up, they were revived by their seconds, and they were brought back up to scratch. So we never really had any record of people being hit as they stood up. So whilst I can't dispute the technique's efficiency, yeah, it's clearly not a pugilistic technique, but it fits with the story quite nicely. So yeah, we'll pass on that. We're still pretty positive. Let's see what happens next. Well, I can't help but feel that that was a little bit of a letdown for the end. You know, it fits with the story. This guy's taken a bit of punishment, he manages to get back up to his feet again, he comes in with yet another big round sweeping blow, and our hero catches him with yet another well-timed, much shorter, much more accurate blow. But then he drops and that's it, it's the end of the fight. We don't even really get to see the blow that our hero throws because it's obscured by his own body. And that's great camera work, it makes for the fight looking really, really nice and really accurate, and it fits. But it's just a little bit disappointing. Maybe I've seen too many cheesy martial arts flicks. Maybe I like for the finishing blow to be something a little bit flashier. But I'm left at the end of this fight thinking this could have been brilliant. And as it is, it's pretty good. If they'd thrown in one or two nice straight punches, then this could have been a really, really good fight. But bearing in mind when this was filmed, this is pretty good. We've not got any of the jarring impacts that you see in the Sherlock Holmes film, which are done so well, and I suspect that the stuntman in question took a bit of punishment in order to get some of those effects that we see. And that's something that we're not seeing in this film, and that, you know, I can accept that. I like the setting, I like the period feel of it, I like the fact that, you know, this could have been straight out of Alanson Wynn's book, but I do wish there'd been a few straight blows. So anyway, that's Barry Lyndon, that's the fight from that. I hope you've enjoyed this breakdown, I hope the editing hasn't been quite as horrific as the last one. Comment below, let me know what you think. Do you agree? Am I talking rubbish, or is this accurate? And let me know if there's anything else you want me to look at. I'm going to look through a few other films, there's a few other suggestions. Gangs of New York is one, there's a fight in Far Away that I'm going to look at. I'm going to look at some of the old cheesy martial arts films as well, and have a look at some of the fights in those, and see if we can pull anything, you know, authentic or accurate out of them. In the meantime, please subscribe. I really appreciate it. It makes me really happy when I see the subscriber numbers creep up. And I've got something special in mind for when I get, it's probably going to be to 10,000 because this is quite a big deal. I'll tell you about it in the next fight breakdown video. So subscribe now, keep your eyes open for the next one, and I'll see you soon. Take care, guys.